I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been reading all the war, and I've been shutting down the stores. Yeah, cause when it rains and it pours, yeah, and I'm ready for some more. Yeah,
and welcome to Put That Coffee Down, the Freight Sales Podcast for closers. It's going to be a fantastic show today. My name's Kevin Hill, here again this week with Blythe Brumleve from Digital Dispatch and Freight School Playbook. How are you doing today, Blythe?
Doing very well. We're in the middle of planning for 2021, so it's my time to shine. I opened up a new planner this week, and it's one of the most exciting times, as I guess nerdy as that sounds. I really look forward to it every year, opening up that new planner.
Opening up that new planner. You know what's the most exciting thing about 2021? Is that it's not 2020. It is not 2020. We can almost close the books on 2020.
What a challenging year, I think, for just so many. And I say challenging because it's a time for successes and a time for failures. And it's a time to sort of look back on what worked and what didn't work and how we can improve. And I think the biggest thing for me is to plan, but not be married to the plan as much as I was, say, this time a year ago, because I did a whole bunch of planning and then it went out the window once COVID hit.
As I say, all forecasts are wrong, all plans are wrong, but some are useful. So 2020 was a year, right? It was a special year, not in the good way, and mostly the bad ways. But what was the most surprising thing about marketing in 2020 that you didn't expect would work as well as it did, but it did?
I think the transition for a lot of creators sort of popping up on LinkedIn, especially in the logistics industry. I've seen it happen in, years ago in sports and entertainment, where there's these independent creators and they're taking their talents away from traditional broadcasting roles in radio and TV, and they're going independent. I've started to see that now happening in the logistics field, and it really started because of COVID, because if you think about it, everybody has to move all of their sales and marketing operations home. They have to get their webcams, they have to get their microphones, and they've started using those opportunities in order to create their own content, which is a really great thing to see, because you can really start to understand what makes people tick in other sectors of the industry that I wouldn't really have known about.
I agree totally with that. It's been a boom for social media, especially LinkedIn and the logistics space. Also for virtual conferences and TV, we've had a booming time here at FreightWaves, really because of COVID. Everyone going home, everyone consuming a lot of content online, virtually, conferences shut down. It gave us a nice, huge platform here at FreightWaves to broadcast out to the industry.
And, credit to you guys, because with that first big conference that everybody was planning on attending, I think you have it in May of each year, but everybody was attending that or planning to attend that live. And then when it moved online, to be able to network with people I probably wouldn't have networked with at the conference, to be able to do that virtually, it sort of built this really great community that we can all sort of bounce ideas off of and start new shows and see what works well for other people, what might not work well for us, and make those plans accordingly, and to update your content plans, which were probably thrown in the trash as soon as March hit.
We always do, right? We always throw those content plans in and race toward what's actually working, because we don't know back in December, where we're at right now, what March is going to be like, so we can just plan and then adapt. It reminds me of the old saying is no battle plan meets or survives contact with the enemy, right? So you make that plan, you go out, contact with the enemy, contact with the market, and you start adapting. And so it's always really about adapting. And another thing about the virtual conferences that I thought was, and still is amazing about that, it gives regular salespeople on the floor who don't get the chances to go to the conferences, to network, to see this, see the content that industry leaders and executives present. It gives them a free seat to watch that, and also to develop a hook to contact some of these industry leaders, because you could always say, hey, I saw your segment on, we have a sales and marketing conference coming up in late January, I think January 21st. I might have that date wrong, but I'll look it up in just a second, where we're going to have industry leaders in sales and marketing come in and do a one-day conference. But even the big event, especially the big event back in May, you got to see a lot of great industry knowledge shared, and you can use that, you can watch that anytime you want to, and use that to reach out to industry leaders.
And I think for a lot of people, they, like you said, they wouldn't have been able to go to the conference. And so it was a great aspect of training for a lot of these salespeople who are probably used to just sending out their message and not really listening a ton. It was a great opportunity from a marketing and sales perspective to really do a lot of listening and learning and adjusting based off of that listening.
And that's what we're going to talk about a lot today, is using what you learned watching all of that content, whether it's social media, virtual conferences, FreightWaves TV, and being able to present that to your customers. So that's a lot about what we're going to plan for in 2021. We have a great guest coming on, Kyle MacNaught from FreightPlus, which formerly is Aborn Co. They're going through a rebranding, so we're going to talk about that a little bit, because that's always interesting. That's maybe one of the most complex things you can do as a marketing professional, is to rebrand an established company.
Yeah, because there's so many intricacies involved, and it's not just, it's social media accounts. It's updating your bios, updating all of the links, migrating to a new website, updating all of the copy on that website, making sure everything is consistent. Even things like email signatures and getting employees to adopt a new email signature, which is a nightmare. But it's one of those things where it's good to, if you're going to spend this time of the year cleaning house and looking at what is working and what isn't, it's sort of the perfect time to do a rebrand, because you're getting everybody to make that switch in one jump instead of several jumps, which I'm sure it's probably not as seamless as I'm making it out to see or seem. So I'm sure that Kyle will break it down of what goes into a rebrand and what's worked and what hasn't worked.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting conversation. I can't wait for that. But let's, first of all, let's thank Salesforce, our monthly sponsor on Put That Coffee Down. Thanks to the Salesforce, a big shout out to them. But let's dive into a study that we have from Jim Bierfeld, who's a consultant, and that I had on in early November for an audio-only version, about a 20-minute interview with Jim about this survey. He had some really good highlights, but you have some interesting spins on the topics as well. So let's dive into that, Blythe.
Sure. So from this Logistics Marketing Advisors, the 2020 survey, they conducted it about a year ago. So keeping that in context of what we're talking about here, they surveyed 100 industry professionals who are on the receiving end of marketing messages from 3PLs, carriers, software companies, and other logistics businesses. So it's exactly who probably the audience of this show is wanting to talk to. They got the information, they got the lowdown of how you should be targeting your messages. And a couple stats that really stood out to me is 72% prefer to be contacted via email. But if you're going to contact them via email, they want personalization involved. So this is kind of what we were talking about, during the pre-show meeting is how do you accommodate your email marketing? Are you sending mass emails? Are you sending personalized emails? Are you doing a little bit of both? So I thought that was really interesting, that a lot of them did not prefer to be cold called, which I think is probably one of the number one ways that salespeople reach out to companies is through a cold call. They prefer to be introduced via word of mouth, via social media, and then they don't mind getting an email from you. So 72% of these 100 industry professionals prefer to be contacted via email.
And I can understand that, because I don't think any of us like getting a cold call, but they still work. Cold calls still work. They're still the bread and butter of the logistics industry, and as long as they keep working, people will still keep using cold calls as well as they should, because they are effective. It's a struggle. It's being down in the trenches. It's facing a lot of rejections, person to person, a lot of voicemails. I've left so many voicemails in my life, I can't even count them. I wish I had $1 for every voicemail I left. I might be rich at that point. But you know, email is coming. You know, especially in 2020, email was a very valuable tool because no one's in the office. Hard to get people's cell phones. It's hard to actually cold call them. So you had to be really creative with emails. And hopefully, the industry got more creative than what they normally are with emails, because usually email marketing, especially mass emails, cold emails, are really very poorly written, very poorly formatted. And above all else, the messaging is poorly given out.
Mhm. I thought that another stat that was really interesting is that they asked, agree or disagree. I log into LinkedIn at least once a week. 86% of the survey respondents said that they log into LinkedIn at least once a week. And this was done a year ago. So seeing the explosion of content creators and salespeople on LinkedIn in logistics, and this was a year ago. So I'm willing to bet that that number has increased from 86% of the amount of people that are logging into LinkedIn each week.
I would probably guarantee it has. And speaking of LinkedIn, I finally have LinkedIn pulled up here. Rhonda, hello. Peter Ball, hello as well. Jake McLeod talking about marketing plans. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Another great quote on that. And our man Rob Bussey over at BWS Logistics. Look at all the people we would never have met if not for COVID. I was affected greatly by COVID coming out of the live events industry, but I am now finishing up my 4th month at BWS Logistics. Looking forward to an awesome 2021. I really feel for all of my trade show contacts and hope that their business is starting to make a comeback in the second half of the year. I know a lot of people who rely on live events, especially the trade shows, are probably taking a hit, but they're the ones on LinkedIn constantly right now.
Absolutely. And that was a few of the other stats that was in this study is categories that have seen growth since 2018. And they asked what informational resources that they rely on to stay current with logistics strategies and industry news. Social media was at the top of that list, between 25 to 30%. Trade shows was next with around 30%. Your website was 42 to 55%. And then podcasts had a slight growth with only 5%, but it is growing. It wasn't even a stat that they measured before 2018. So I thought that was interesting, seeing the growth of podcasts as informational resources. But if I'm kind of reading between the lines with a lot of these numbers, is that people are getting introduced to great content on social media, then they're checking out your website, and then that's an opportunity for marketing and sales teams to convert that audience into email subscribers, because if 72% of them prefer to be emailed, then you could be capturing that attention in the digital landscape through social media, and then converting those visitors on your website into your email list.
Yeah, I want to talk more about converting your leads into your email newsletter, your email subscription list in just a second. But I'm looking here at webcasts and webinars, and it seems to be pretty steady over the last 6 years. And why do you have a belief of why that might be?
I think webinars in particular are a more it's a more personalized experience. Some webinar tactics that I've tried in the past and that I've seen other marketers try is to make the webinar not a sales pitch. Make it about providing value to the audience that is attending. And then where the real value for you is to take that content that you're talking about in the webinar, chop it up into different clips, into different posts, and then using that content to promote out to social media. When buyers or people aren't ready to buy when they come to a webinar, they're looking for information. So I think that using that tactic as using the webinar as an informational product to talk to potential leads that might come down in the future, I think that that's a better strategy to take than a webinar that maybe some of us have attended and you're pretty sure within 10 minutes into the webinar that it's just a sales pitch. I will X out of a webinar so fast if it's just a sales pitch. Provide value first and then worry about the sale afterwards, in my opinion.
I think that should be everyone's opinion. Marketing should be a Trojan horse in a lot of ways, right? I mean, it should sneak up on you. It shouldn't be a straight pitch about your product. It should be about your industry knowledge, market expertise, how to add value to your customers for free. And I think that's still the first rule of sales and marketing is to send out a lot of valuable information without asking for anything in return. And you build up so much brand value that way that the sales, whenever they do occur, whenever those prospects do come in, they are very warm. They're much easier in the closing process.
And I think what you make a really great point, and I think what a lot of people struggle with whenever they are hosting webinars is just to get people to show up to the
Yeah.
thing. So what has helped me in the past is to get the registrants and then email them personally and ask them what's a topic that you're struggling with, what's a topic that you would like to see me cover in this webinar. And when you make it more personalized, those people are more likely to show up because you're personalizing it for them. So I think that that's a tactic that has really helped, not just from a content production standpoint, but also genuinely listening to what people want to hear from you and what they're struggling with.
I think that is so much a best practice. I never really thought about doing that on webinars until Joe Lynch told me a couple months ago. He was going through that same thing, and I was like, "Wow, this is such a good idea." And now you're telling me now too. You know, great minds think alike, and I can tell because I mean, why do a webinar if it's not tailored around what the people that are potentially going to show up want to hear? You know, it's like any content that you do.
And it resulted in close to 80% of the registrants, 80% of those people showed up live and they were actively listening. And then from that, I was able to cut that show up into 12 different clips on social media and provide that value additionally outside of just the webinar. So that's, a couple like distribution hacks that you can employ in your own tactics moving into 2021 is actively listening, asking questions, and then letting that sort of form your content plan moving forward.
You're exactly right on that. And well, number one, Dooner's listening to us. He's making fun of me on LinkedIn. I'm not quite sure for what, but he's just making fun of me. But we have Peter Bole. He's a retired senior strategic procurement manager. And going along with webcasts, same can be said for canned PowerPoints, where all they do is pitch by replacing the recipient and company name without regard to the company's needs or industries. So PowerPoints have the same problem with some webcasts. Any content that you have that you're just pitching your product, you're going to have problems with.
It's just a bad way to do business. You've done all of the hard work. You got people to pay attention to your offer. You got people to sign up for the offer. You got them to attend live, and then that's the route that you're going to take with your content. It's just not something that I would do. Seeing, you want to be able to see the forest for the trees, and being able to look at it from a high level view of what can I do with this content out after this webinar is over, after this show is over. Even with a lot of the PDFs and the way that you present them, make it personalized, make it about them. It's not about you.
It's about them. It's not about you. When you make it about you, if you make it about you, then it's what they call manufacturer's copy. No one cares about how old your company is or all these facts and figures. They all always just care about them. And you're making the mistake of talking about you. We have a first-time viewer here, Casey Tagarian from Blazing Logistics. He's a CEO over there. So Casey, thanks for joining us today. Okay, so what's our next talking point on this survey, Blythe?
So the next talking point on this survey, I think it just kind of circles back to a lot of the ways that people prefer to be contacted in order to learn more or discuss a project that you may have in mind for that prospect. And the inquiry trigger was recommendations by a colleague. That was 27% of the respondents. That's preferred. How they find out about a new project is from the recommendation of somebody else. And then the next one is relationship with that salesperson. So if you're actively working in sales, 16% of the respondents said that they want to have a prior relationship to you. So I think it sort of hints back to that content creation and really taking, some of your sales calls and publishing them live, taking some of that information that you gather through your sales calls and saying, this is what you can expect if you were to hop on a call with me. So people know what to expect before jumping into it. The next one on the list is internet search results at 15%. And then we go into attended sort of trade shows, reputations, things like that. Also, industry media was another big one. So I think it sort of just hints back to you have to make sure that you're out there, that that you're creating regular content, you're publishing it to social media, because then that creates that word of mouth. Which word of mouth, that was the number one thing from this study, is word of mouth has and probably always will remain undefeated. And so if you can capture that and develop those relationships early on, it makes your sales cycle turn from maybe 6 months to 5 days or even a day. So as long as people are becoming familiar with you, I think that there's still a lot of missed opportunities with content creation, that you're not developing it to get 20 leads knocking down your door tomorrow. You're developing it in order to establish those relationships for people who are going to be reaching out in 6 to 10 months.
Yeah, it's all long term, right? If you think short term all the time, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail
Right.
badly. It's got to be long term plans, long term lead generation. Is that sustainability on that? So that's the most important thing. I think that's what a lot of salespeople, a lot of marketing people mistake. Everyone's looking for this month's numbers. Well, if you didn't do your prospecting or your content generation or however you're getting leads 3 months ago, you're not going to hit this month's number. And if you do just things that you can to hit this month's number, then you're going to be in the same position next month.
And it goes for marketing too. I think for a lot of marketers, you're stuck in sort of the old way of thinking where you just need to get a certain amount of MQLs every single month. And what does an MQL look like from a data perspective? It's, ebook downloads. That's one of the bigger ones. It's get a demo. And while I know that get a demo is sort of the holy grail of marketing, ebook downloads are famously low for conversion rates. So what's happening is that these marketers are tied to these numbers. They're sending those leads that are not going to convert over to sales. And then sales just sort of becomes frustrated with the process, and they don't want any more of these ebook downloads. So it's a good time of the year to, as if you're marketing or sales, to look at where those leads are coming from and how they're ultimately converting, because that can help you determine your budget and where you should spend your time and energy for next year.
It definitely will. It definitely will. And speaking about developing that marketing plan, once again, let's bring in Kyle here in just a second. I want to give a shout out to Patrick Mayer, Catherine Whitehouse, and James Fry and C.R. Burns. My LinkedIn, it keeps on bumping around. I can't keep track of it. But that's good. But let's welcome in Kyle MacNaught from FreightPlus, formerly Aborn Company, to join the show here. And this is an interesting situation I find myself in, because I'm now on air with two people that have replaced Dooner in different things. How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing great, yeah. Yep, actually, believe it or not, I work at the company Dooner was working at before he came to FreightWaves. So even the podcast Consulting Logistics that I produce is Dooner's. So I have a bone to pick with Dooner with the tripod he picked for video, because for some reason he picked a pistol grip tripod. Makes no sense. Leveling the thing is such a pain in the butt. So in case any of you are wondering, don't let Dooner pick a tripod for you, because he has no idea what he's doing.
Now, Kyle,
Kevin loves it.
I know, right? I'm waiting to see what he says on here. But so Kyle.
I love Dooner. I love Dooner.
Oh yeah, we all love Dooner. We all do. So you're a graduate of Florida State University, and before you joined Aborn Company, now FreightPlus, which we'll talk about in just a second, you worked for. You produced live streams for Dunkin' Donuts, Cadillac, TEDx Talks, NAB, and CES. I will now give you your 30-second elevator pitch. I don't have the music with me, but I'll assume that you're honest with the 30 seconds.
I'll start my timer. Essentially, I've been multimedia producer. I love everything, right? I was kind of born in the whole creating videos, like downloading YouTube videos and making compilation videos. So I've been doing all that my whole life. Moved up to Boston when I graduated Florida State because I hate warm weather, I guess. I didn't know how bad snow was. Should have just stayed down in Jacksonville with Blythe. But yeah, I started working for live streaming in 2010. So doing a lot of cool stuff, producing second screen experiences with Dunkin' Donuts and Cadillac, doing whole TEDx talks for the entire weekend where I didn't get any sleep, on a lot of fun stuff, but it was a lot of kind of stuff for companies. So I moved over to a nonprofit where we were doing more educational advocacy stories, super fun. a lot of like rolling up my sleeves. I was walking Las Vegas with a firefighter. It was one of the first ones to be on the scene during the active shooter. And he's like, oh yeah, just crazy stories. He's like, oh yeah, I was walking, I kept stepping on glass, and it took me a little bit, but I was like, oh, that's the glass the shooter shot out. I was like, oh my gosh. So lots of crazy stories, but yeah, advocacy's a fun game. It's a fun world, and a lot of content creation. I got to do a lot of crazy stuff, and then kind of got to meet Steve Aborn, who Dooners talked a lot about, and got to meet Jill Clifford, and they brought me over to the world of logistics. So got to jump into that and start creating, because the industry is so much fun right now. I was pumped when I kind of was just diving into it at the beginning, but if 2020 was anything, it was just a boom of how many people started really creating content. And that was way
So
over 30.
Oh, that's okay.
that's okay. For Kyle, you've spent a lot of time personalizing that experience from a marketing perspective, working with other people. What was your first task that you wanted to tackle moving into the world of logistics? Was it that same approach that you want to, walk around with a firefighter, but instead it's a sales team now? What was that first thing that you wanted to tackle from a content perspective?
It was that. You actually kind of nailed it. I did a podcast series that won some awards for the nonprofit, where we kind of followed a family of burn survivors who unfortunately they lost some kids, so it wasn't a great story, but it was all kind of what a home fire does, and sort of advocating for home fire sprinklers. So when we started talking about what's going on, I was like, well, man, there's probably a cool, like I could create like a cool limited run series for like stuff like what the carriers are doing, or what a logistics operation works like, because you really don't think about it. Like I love the guys that I knew at the nonprofit that worked in logistics, but I was always like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to create that sort of series in something that's a little like Serial, right? I mean, every one of us in the podcasting game, like more or less started off Serial. How do we do that type of stuff? But yeah, that was my hope when I walked in. And then I got punched in the face at how crazy logistics is immediately. I was like, oh my, what is this place? You mean it's not just truckers going from A to B? So yeah, it kind of was a quick pivot. But the really cool thing for me, especially at FreightPlus, formerly Aborn Co, is we have like people with 30 plus years in logistics that are so patient with me. I mean, Jill Clifford, she's been on a couple of the shows here. She will take time and really explain a lot of what's going on in logistics. So I just listened. Actually, a huge shout out to Adam Robinson over at your guys' side, because I listened to a podcast he did where he talked about when he first joined, because he was sort of like me, he just was content guy, joined in, and he's like, I just interviewed everyone. And I kind of did the same. I used Dooner's gear because I had to figure out how all this stuff worked, because it was very Happy Meal like. Joking, this stuff was great, but yeah, I interviewed everyone, and then I sat in on client calls. I mean, that was the big thing. I just sat in on every client call I possibly could, because I just learned. You're hearing from your clients, you're hearing from what your prospects are probably going through, and you're listening and hearing what their complaints are, and then you have these industry experts that are explaining to them and keeping them calm and stuff. So that was the big eye opener for me, is just attending those. That was the most valuable thing I did when I first started.
So after as you're absorbing information, talking to everybody, talking to the people internally there, and customers, what was your first big idea of what to create? What series to create content-wise?
Well, I want to keep the consulting logistics going. So that was the podcast that Dooner started. He was passionate about. He did a couple of cool themes in there that I thought I could kind of keep up with. So I wanted to keep the podcasting going, because this was 2019, right? Podcasting in the logistics industry had not blown up to what it has now. So we already had I had about 40 something episodes down. We had somewhat of an audience. So I didn't want to miss out on that. But a lot of what I was hearing was there's a lot of simple stuff that people kind of take for granted. And at first I just thought I was the dumbest one in the room. I'm like, okay, so wait, what? They don't know about this? And they're like, yeah, like a lot of people don't understand how an LTL hub works, or like what chargebacks are, because they kind of just avoid all that type of stuff. So I just started picking up on that. I just have a little notepad. I write it down. I'm like, all right, here we go. LTL hub. What is that? How does this mode work? How do these things start going? And I started realizing that there was opportunities to create something that, sure, some of us in the industry probably think of as no-brainers, but me with 2 years under my belt, I'm like, oh, this is great. It's like awesome to learn this type of stuff. And I just do some whiteboard videos where I just have my guys just illustrate to me what this means. And that's all. Like, I've seen it in the past. I did it a little bit at the nonprofit, so it was sort of just kind of taking some stuff I was doing in the past, but bringing that out there. But I mean, the big thing I learned from client calls was like, people take for granted how little everyone kind of really does know, and how much they're kind of just looking to hear what others are doing. I mean, that's the big thing. They're like, I just don't know what, like, I do what I do. I do it day in and day out. What's someone else doing? And that's kind of where conferences and stuff come in. But it's also, as we know, it's not easy to attend a conference a lot of times. And now with the virtual ones, it's sort of like I'm already at my computer so long. Not that FreightWaves hasn't done an amazing job making virtual conferences. You guys are the best one I've seen. But it's also just giving them short form content that's important.
And you make a really good point, and I'm glad that you brought up the whiteboard series, because that was one of the first moments that I got an education in logistics as well, because it's some of that content that I don't know, and so those videos helped me understand sort of the LTL world as well. And you can tell with the numbers on your guys' videos that a lot of other people, those are some of your more successful videos, is that a lot of people are actively looking for that kind of information. And you've been managing sort of a content marketing plan since 2019. I say sort of, you've definitely been doing it, but you've also expanded into hiring interns and getting the executives on board. What kind of initial challenges, if any, did you run into with getting other employees and executives involved in the content marketing plan?
Oh, no one wants to be on camera. No one wants to be on camera. If they did, they're in the field that made them want to actually be on camera, or they're YouTubers. Um, it was a lot of getting them to kind of feel comfortable in front of the camera. A lot of it, I mean, it's like sales, right? It's you picking up the cold call, and you got to make them feel comfortable with you. So you can't start asking crazy questions. You really got to make the connection. You got to listen. You got to kind of hear what they're saying. A big thing I do is create an outline. So I send out the outline, and I kind of make it simple. I play the dumbest in the room because most of the time I am, uh, but it's mainly just kind of learning and listening. Like that's the big thing. Interns were good. I mean, interns, I kind of, I love mentoring, right? I heard the whole thing of like, if you can't bring on an intern, it means if you can't teach, you're not confident in what you're doing. So I love bringing on interns because like when they bring up things I don't know, and especially in the video world, these kids are going so fast with video. I get so mad at how good they are at all this stuff. 'Cause I'm like, I did years of getting this, and you're like doing this on your phone. Like my little cousin can throw out this amazing edit that like when I put into a video was like I was being impressive. I'm like, I hate you. Why are you doing this to me? But I mean, I learned from them. And a lot of it is I tell them, like, hey, I'm going to give you more responsibilities as we kind of continue and see how you guys are doing. So I'm going to start simple. You guys show me that you listen, and we can kind of go from there. And a lot of what I'm doing is explaining as I go. But yeah, I love the internship. The executives have all kind of bought in. They believe in the power of education and kind of creating content. So it's been super fun, and just everyone at FreightPlus is very much on board with it.
So Kyle, you've been in logistics for 18 months, and I went through the same process that everyone else did. You know, my first day in a freight broker seat, I had no idea between a dry van and a flatbed trailer, and I just had to learn it as I sold it, which is a very difficult proposition, but it's what basically all freight salespeople do. I mean, they learn it as they go, because most people come from outside the industry. So been there 18 months, you're going into 2021, we're making our marketing budgets. What are some of the main goals that you have for 2021?
You guys kind of talked about before, right? It is those MQLs. It is filling out that type of stuff. Big things for me is just going to be video. Trying to make sure we're putting out that stuff, continuing to grow that channel. It's something that I'm seeing more and more growth and more connections and people watching. I mean, you guys talk about why it's so important, but the one thing that you guys didn't mention was signaling. I mean, yeah, it's great. So a lead kind of finds you all that stuff, but the idea that you're putting out this amount of content really signals that like, hey, you guys are a lot, like you look bigger than you really are. I mean, believe it or not, I'm kind of a two-person team. It's me and my marketing assistant who's about to leave me, Courtney Conyers, she's going to become a business development rep. So it's back to old solo Kyle, which is going to be a blast. But yeah, it's signaling and making us look like, wow, but Blythe nailed it. It's cutting up the content, right? You're shooting
Mhm.
one big thing, and then you're going to chop it up to different formats, different sizing, different messaging, going to different channels. I mean, that's kind of the big thing. But yeah, I mean, supporting my sales is all that I really focus on. How do I support sales? Like marketing is that. How do I kind of help those guys close?
And you bring up a really good topic because that's something that I think a lot of teams get pushback on, especially when creating, new videos and new podcasts. Executives want to know, how can I track the ROI from this? The infamous question that every marketer has to answer at some point. So what is your answer to that if sales comes back to you and says, this isn't working, we could do this better, or an executive says, well, why do we need to spend more money on creating a podcast or video when the sales team is making 100 cold calls a day? What is your justification to the statements like that?
Well, the big trick is trying to make sure you keep every cost as low as possible, which you should
Mhm.
be able to do. You should be able to film with your phone. It has a 4K camera in it. You buy a cheap microphone. This thing that I have right now with my little Madonna mic is cheap. It's probably less than $20. Like, you should be able to keep costs down. Video does not cost the arm and the leg that it used to. So that's the big thing. Watch time's important. Kind of seeing when people are dropping off, how long you're retaining, kind of helps with, hey, is this message right? Those are kind of the big things that I look towards with video. In KPI world, I mean, it's the usual stuff of like opens, the lead to conversions, that type of stuff. We do have a data science team at FreightPlus, so I'm kind of lucky there. So I'm going to start using them in 2021 to try to create some more actionable insights of what
Mm.
these reports look like, really helping out the sales staff. And honestly, the sales guys and gals, they more or less just need to know where the content is. So the big thing for me
Mm.
is a content library. Like, metrics are important, but those guys, they look at it from time to time. Like, I find they'll look at it, they'll find it interesting if a prospect can be served up and they know what they looked at. But they usually are kind of, they're alphas, right? They know what they're talking about. They believe in themselves. They sell themselves. So if I can give them tools and just have that toolbox
Mhm.
where they understand how to use it and they can just pull from it, and then also I'm there for them, that's kind of been the thing that's been most successful for me.
Hmm.
So Kyle, Dooner says about the equipment specifically.
Oh, he's talked to me a bunch on LinkedIn. I'm like, why did you do
I
this?
know,
He's
right?
like, because I'm here.
As if I set the gear budget. Kyle, I'm 20 minutes from you right now. Don't make me come over there. So there's a
Listen, I'll
warning
take it
from
anytime.
Dooner.
Yeah. I got Mortal Kombat machine, Duna. You want to go anytime. You don't want my smoke that I'm about to bring it.
Beard versus beard.
So Kyle, what is your advice for anyone out there who wants to do their own content on a low budget, but both on the tech side and also on the content side? I think we've all decided the shorter the content, the better. But what are some of the main things that you always think about whenever you're creating new content?
Yeah, I actually wouldn't even necessarily say shorter the better. I mean, most YouTube videos I'm seeing are 14 minutes, 15 minutes, 30
Okay.
minutes. I mean, people are watching it 2 times speed at this point. It depends on if you're prospecting, right? So sales wise, you probably have to make it 30 seconds if you're going to put that in an email. Um, but yeah, I forgot the question because I was thinking about the shorter thing. But
Just on the content side,
oh yeah, oh yeah.
what should people include? I mean, what are the key ingredients to making a great video podcast, anything?
You want to tell the story. It's got to be interesting, as short as it can be, as long as it needs to be. So don't fill a time per se, but if it's going to take you 3 minutes to explain something, it takes 3 minutes. Don't make it hit 5 minutes. I say the same for webinars, kind of with anything. Like, I hate webinars that you sit there and you're like, we're spending an extra 15 minutes. This is done. Like, you're not saying anything anymore. Like, we've hit that limit. Why are we still talking? So as short as it can be, as long as it needs to be, though. Trust me, I worked with engineers. Those guys love to talk about everything. So it was mainly, what is the point of what you're trying to say? Um, so that's the big thing, and then just go. I mean, the just go shoot is the thing I always say. Don't People ask me all the time, how do I get started and stuff? I mean, I got started editing with Premiere Pro, where my buddy slash producer sat me in front of the machine. It was after hours. We had to edit a bunch of videos. He goes, C is cut, V is paste, go, and that was it. And then I use Google, I use YouTube. Those are your 2 biggest friends. Google everything. I still Google. I tell people, like, if you came to me with a question about how to do something with video and you didn't Google it, I'm going to be mad at you because you wasted my time because you couldn't figure out how Google works.
That's what my boss used to say to me when I was an executive assistant, is it's your job to figure it out. So you have to have some kind of that entrepreneurial spirit whenever you're diving into a new medium like this, because not only do you have to know the background, but you have to actively be doing the research and trying to get better and getting those reps in. And that's the only way you get better, is getting those reps. Kyle, what's currently untapped in logistics marketing that more companies should be taking advantage of in 2021?
Video. I mean, video, it's there. A lot of it is, I mean, again, it's what I see. So I could be wrong and I could be missing stuff. And if I am, please let me know. But what I'm seeing is a lot of kind of video recordings of podcasts and webinars. But there is so much more in video that you could be creating. There's so many interesting things. I mean, I know one of the YouTube channels I particularly love is by this guy named Trucker Josh that films the day in the life of trucking, like of just him driving he's a Canadian truck driver, kind of driving all around. When he hit the pandemic, it was insane. Just of like what he was experiencing and stuff. And that's just genuine video. That's his voice. It's not him kind of doing a marketing thing. It's really just him creating. And there's a ton of stuff. I mean, lists are great. I watch a ton of wrestling video list. Dooner does too. So that's why you don't want to get any of the people's elbow and bring it to you, Dooner. But yeah, lists are another thing. There's a ton of video content out there that others are doing. And Blythe, I know you and I talk a lot about this, but I mean, the thing is, like, it's not stealing, right? Paying attention to content is important, especially as a content creator, and particularly pay attention to stuff that caught your attention. I mean, half the time anything that catches my attention, I'm like, okay, what caught my attention? Was it a title? Was it a thumbnail? Was it this? Like, what was it? I save it. I mean, it was Pinteresting forever. Now I kind of just put it in Teams to myself. But yeah, I mean, pay attention to what others are doing and see, like, hey, would this be interesting in my industry? Could I create something that's a little cool to do? And don't be afraid to kind of experiment. Nothing's going to be great the first time, not online. Like, I'm happy that my channel I think is about to hit 200 like subscribers, and that's great for me. I'm pumped about that, but it took a lot of hard work. And then read about the channel. I mean, these channels, these algorithms are very particular how they want to be used. So you can't just upload and say like, we did it, yay, way to go. I mean, there's stuff like descriptions, metadata, all these things, closed captioning. There's a bunch of stuff that you got to kind of read about and pay attention to, because it constantly is changing. They're always updating. So fortunately, it's work. Work is kind of the big thing to do.
It is. Nothing replaces work, right? And one of the things that I always talk about, and we were talking about, I think earlier in the show, I want to get your opinion on it. I know what your opinion is going to be, but the reasons behind it is, I think a lot of marketing people get fixated on this ROI per channel instead of doing what's immeasurable. And a lot of video content, podcast content, rebranding is hard to measure, but it needs to be done because it's complementary to all your kind of straight marketing channels and sales channels, all those cold calls. But it's hard to measure. How do you respond to people when they talk about ROI a little bit too much?
I don't find it hard to measure. I find it hard to explain. Right. Yeah. So the executives are like, what do you like? Is this going to get us leads? Is this going to get us prospects? I'm still struggling. Right. I mean, I wish I had a perfect answer of like, just say this and they get it. But a lot of it, I mean, it's listening. It's kind of hearing what their concerns are, trying to find the ways that's explaining what you're doing and how you're kind of expanding our reach. Like, no one likes awareness. Awareness seems fake. It doesn't seem real, but it's an important thing. It is kind of, I know a ton of people hate on it, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, cool. Like if my awareness is a little bit bigger, I have more of a pool to come from. I mean, it's simple math with those guys, but ROIs wise, I wish I had a good answer to that. It is, if you can keep everything low and it's not something that they're seeing in the budget, you kind of get to do a little bit more. So again, use your phone, use things that they aren't really kind of paying attention to. I mean, the one cool thing I learned in 2020 was that our video conferencing records. It can do whiteboards. It can do a bunch of stuff. So I've been able to kind of produce and kind of make, like, my production level has gotten better because of being remote. Because I've been able to be doing like 3 camera shoots and be able to switch between stuff and all that on the fly while doing interviews. So if it's not a budget item and they don't see it, your ROI is going to be great. So try to make it free.
Kyle, what does your, I guess, a typical week look like for you as far as creating new content compared to like a typical month? Are you actively planning out the following month as far as content is concerned? Are you shooting on a certain day? What are the, I guess, the steps to success that maybe other companies can replicate?
I'm not live, so I've got it pretty easy. You can record as much as you need to, right? 52 weeks in a year, I got to create 52 pieces of content. For the most part, I've created a template for my podcast and my video stuff, so I can kind of know how long that's going to take me and kind of measure all that type of stuff. I also know it's unfair because I have 10 something years of doing internet video. So I understand pulling down frame rates, all that type of stuff. Um, Typically, I would prefer to have everything recorded, but if I didn't do that, I'm kind of working off of like the week to the month stuff. I'm probably going to try to record early in the week so I can give my guest an opportunity to kind of review what I did. And what I'll do is kind of pull it down, do a very rough cut edit. Nothing crazy, just kind of make sure that they can hear the message, make sure they like everything that they heard. If they want to remove something, it gives me time to really have to do some more roll up your sleeves editing. Give them that. I also try to, once they say it's all good, I'll do the final cut and also create my short clips. So kind of doing that all right away. And then I'm using like our CRM will do a little scheduling stuff, but kind of like a TweetDeck or Hootsuite, that type of stuff, getting everything scheduled. And then it's also kind of talking, attending meetings, getting some more things, planning stuff out. I use Microsoft Notes. That's my big thing. So I just constantly will like add little like, okay, here's a content idea. Here's a content idea. That type of stuff. But yeah, for the month though, at the end of it's mainly the kind of that type of stuff. And at the end of the month, I'm going to create my reports, kind of start digging into my data, trying to provide like reports that they're going to care about. So paying attention to what my executives want, communicating with them, and talking to others. I mean, a lot of, as you guys say, like I have a little internal team. I really rely on my experts who are kind of the day-to-day operators, load planners, brokerage, all those guys. I try to make sure that they're aware of success. So I don't want them to feel like I just am helping this dumb marketer with a beard out who like talks trash about my putting skills. I want them to feel like they were successful and they helped me be successful. So a lot of that is just going through in our kind of ops meetings and our team meetings and kind of talking about success and explaining why it's so important.
Yeah, so I have an audience question to start off with. Are those Call of Duty headphones? You can imagine who's asking that.
These might be Dooner headphones, to be honest with you. I think these are Logitech. Oh, no, they are. They're Dooner headphones. I'm using his. My headphones are a lot bigger, a little more noise canceling, but no, not Call of Duty. Unfortunately, I have a 8-month-old, so I'm playing Nintendo Switch if I'm playing anything.
That's awesome. Let's talk about the rebranding. What's the one thing that you've learned so far in rebranding?
Oh, God.
There's got to be one. There's probably like 800, but just pick one or two.
Timing is never, it's sort of like doing a home renovation where you think you can do it all yourself. Like it's absolutely not going that way. There is so many more moving parts than you could ever expect. I think again, it goes to communications and important in communication at the beginning. I think that was one thing that I probably didn't do as great of a job as I should have of communicating internally of kind of what we're going to be critiquing at certain periods and certain points in time and stuff like that. And then sort of how much you really can kind of go back on stuff. That was sort of a fun thing. Literally yesterday, I just switched over our emails. That's a pain in the butt. This morning, I've been working on all of our social channels. Also a pain in the butt. So as much planning as you can do, it's not impossible, but I mean, there's going to be mistakes. It's kind of like Blythe said, I use this kind of time period because it's good. I can kind of take the break, know that not a lot of people are really knocking down my website to figure out what's happening right now. We have a SEO plan to go in 2021. We're probably going to do some PR too in 2021, kind of the beginning. We're going to probably be doing like 3 months of formally Aborn Co. So I'm getting excited to talk about that. And then all of December, we luckily kind of use the holidays as kind of our excuse to talk to clients. I got to do a lot of face-to-face stuff with over Zoom. Talking to clients, kind of prepare them and sort of getting their feedback. And then we also, as you can see with this beautiful shirt I'm wearing, we got to print out some apparel and send that as sort of like the holidays are here. Remember, we're changing our everything. Hi. So yeah, communicate as much as you can at the beginning. That's kind of the big thing for me when it came to rebranding. I probably should have talked a lot more.
No, you guys have gone through this big change, and what's not going to change is, I think, is some of the formatting of your content and obviously the goals of all the content you're going to create. Do you have any favorite episodes that you have done in the past that you want to try to do more of in the next year?
Yeah, Dooner actually did this thing called SCU 30, which is Supply Chain Under 30. I loved it. It's so much fun to talk to these kids coming out of college and what their experience was. Because I mean, they had cell phones, they had smartphones to begin with. I'm like, yeah, I got a smartphone because my mother got sick of picking us up from we didn't even have a smartphone. We had the thing that played the Nokia brick that played Snake. I'm like, we had that because my mom was sick of picking us up from baseball. So she basically is like, here, this is the only thing you can use this for. I'm like, you kids knew what this was growing up. So talking to them, seeing how much they're aware of the supply chain, kind of learning what drove them and how they got to it. It's so fascinating. I got to do a couple, one with internally, I use that's kind of my fun thing because as we bring on new people, I can talk to them and they don't need to be an expert in logistics. I can just sort of talk to them about what was their journey to get here. And people are really happy to talk about that. I got to even talk to this Maddie Kelly over at CVS Health. Super fun conversation. And they're just a fun group to talk about. But all about what she was doing to get into logistics was a blast to sort of hear from. So that's a fun one. One thing I'm really going to try to do is be a little more focused on my kind of themes and stuff. So a big thing I really, really enjoyed that we did was something I wasn't even on. It was a interview we did with Jeremy Eisenberg from Chex Finder Foods, and I had our CEO, or not our CEO, our director, Steve Aborn, just talking to him, and they're both family-run businesses, so they kind of got to have this really interesting conversation of what's it like to be the manager, the GM of your own kind of family-owned business, and how you're kind of really invested in the staff becomes your family. So I love those things. I don't like being on stuff. I'd rather be producing. I'd rather have my experts speaking the language that the prospects and my audience is going to speak. I know that I don't know everything that they're going to talk about, and a lot of times I learn questions from what my guys are talking about. So I'd love to get more CEOs, more logistics managers, more shippers kind of talking to my load planners, talking to my brokerage team, talking to Chris Peckham, who's this amazing VP of operations we have that's crazy amazing at how smart the guy is. And he's been doing everything forever. But he scares the heck out of you the first time you meet him because he's very serious and he's got jacked. So yeah, it's so much fun having him, but he's the nicest guy. He explained IMO 2020 to me probably 15 times. He's still is explaining everything to me. And he's really passionate. So, I mean, I love having those guys talk, and I love when they talk to others. Talking to me is fine because I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It doesn't really affect me as much as you would think. When they talk to other people, that's the thing I really enjoy.
That's fantastic. Hey, do you have a 2021 resolution? I'm going to ask you both this. Do you have a 2021 marketing resolution lined out so far? Something that, just like a New Year's Eve, a New Year's resolution.
Do you want to go first, Blythe? I've talked a lot.
Well, for me, I would say that I'm going to practice more end of the month, end of the quarter resolutions. I want to celebrate more of those small wins that lead into something greater. I want to kind of, pull back a little from I'm going to make one New Year's resolution at one time of the year. I think, 2020 sort of taught us to celebrate the minor wins. And I think you can only really do that if you do it on a monthly or a quarterly scale.
I would 100% agree with that. A big resolution for me is going to be better at reports, be better at metrics, be better at kind of talking about the minor wins. The other thing I really, really want to make sure I'm doing is the video testimonials. I love capturing video testimonials. I like doing that type of storytelling. I got to do one with one of our clients. It was really fun. Kind of got to go see their operation. That's my client saying why we're great. That's not me putting words in their mouth. You see them saying the stuff, you're hearing it, and to me that's a better connection than I could ever make. So I want to do more of those. Thanks a lot, COVID. Couldn't really visit anyone, but yeah, that's the big thing for me.
I think for me the big thing I think I'm going to learn how to use Twitter. I still really haven't figured out how to get my news and everything from Twitter. I kind of dabble in it, but I think I'm going to go full force into really doing it. I do like the video testimonials, so I need to start doing a few more of those. But yeah, I think I'm going to learn Twitter. That's going to be my 2021. and
Oh no,
produce more
trial by
content.
fire.
Oh yeah,
Produce more content.
Produce more content. Avoid
Produce
Twitter.
more content. Yes, I'm going to put out more content. And that's always my New Year's resolution for marketing, is just to put out as much content as possible and see what works. I don't know what's going to work. I don't know what's not going to work. But just keep going and posting things out and making videos and just, you can't really go wrong if you do that.
No,
Bingo.
my business development reps, I'm already filming them. We're going to start incorporating snippet 30-second videos that I filmed with an iPhone that they can include. And like, hey, so and so reaching out to you because I'd love to talk to you. And like that's the type of thing. Just you start creating. I mean, if it was 30 seconds, B, it was on my iPhone. So if it doesn't work, it's not a big deal. It wasn't like we had a whole video production team that recorded this and you couldn't say the words. Like it's fine.
Yes, definitely correct. It's been a pleasure having you on here, Kyle, and learning more about your marketing strategies and how you took over the reins from Dooner, of course, there at FreightPlus. How does our audience, so there's a few people out here wanting to know how to reach out and contact you and learn more about FreightPlus and get some more of your insights?
Oh, absolutely. And please contact me. I love talking this stuff, again, mentoring or even talking video. I have had a ton of people. It's like, hey, I'd just love to pick your brain. I am more than happy to talk. LinkedIn's a great channel. Kyle MacNaught, MacNaught. That's kind of the LinkedIn channel. FreightPlus.io is the website. So you can go in there. We have a whole resource page. You can kind of see old Dooner stuff. You can see new stuff that I created. You can judge and tell us on LinkedIn who is the best one. And then Dooner will probably threaten to beat you up if he's 20 minutes away, I guess. Joking, Dooner's stuff was amazing. And it really just kind of built off of his. But yeah, FreightPlus.io is kind of the website to go check out. We're on YouTube. YouTube, search FreightPlus. That's the way. Tons of video up there. Please check it out. That's kind of, again, probably more my baby just because of me loving video so much. So yeah, check that out and reach out to me on LinkedIn. And then my email is just kmacnaught@freightplus.io.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kyle, and have a happy New Year.
You too, guys. Enjoy it. Stay warm. I'm up here in Boston. Go Jags with their Trevor Lawrence pickup, everything like that.
Yeah, had to sneak it in somehow.
And Ryan Schreiber told me to talk trash about Florida State, but I won't do that.
Oh, what trash can you talk about a trashy team? I mean, we're not even bowling this year. It doesn't matter.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us, Kyle.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you,
You bet.
Kyle.
Bye.
Killed it.
Yeah. And Dooner Sharp Words is not just for Kyle or myself. He was making fun of me earlier. He says, Blythe, spoken like a true Jags fan.
I mean, we got to cheer for the little wins when we can. I cheered earlier in the year when we got our first win at the first game, and we haven't won a game since. So now I have to get my other little wins in. It's the first time in franchise history we have the first overall pick. So I have a chance at getting a generational talent at quarterback. There's still a lot of holes to fill on this team, but that's the most important first step.
And that's a lock now, right? You have won the first draft pick. No one can screw it up and take that from you, right?
It's a lock now. I was worried, a couple weeks ago when we had it, and I was like, they're going to screw it up somehow because I'm just conditioned to have that loser mentality as a sports fan. And they're going to screw it up somehow. And I still, in the back of my mind, I still wonder if they're actually going to choose him during the draft. So unless the contract is signed, there is still a way for this team to screw it up. So just trying to set the expectations low and allow that hope to creep in just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah, Baker Mayfield, former OU quarterback, love him to death, but he lost to the Jets, which did you guys a huge favor over in Jacksonville, Florida.
Well, it's crazy because with Baker Mayfield, that's one of those situations where the Browns are a perennial loser, just like the Jaguars, and they were doing so good this year, and then they missed the playoffs completely because they're in such a tough division. So it's a little heartbreaking for Browns fans to be that close and then just have it ripped from you. But I guess, that's sort of, why we're sports fans, is to go through this annual pain every single year of the roller coaster of hope and defeat.
Yes, mostly defeat for most of us, though, right?
Yes.
Let's give away a book to a winner. Let's make a winner out of somebody in the audience. You can pick out a number from 1 to, I think, 117.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna go with number 6.
Number 6, you like the top of the order here a lot of times, don't you? Helen Mann. Helen Mann is the winner of the book. It's going to be Daniel Stanton, Mr. Supply Chain.
Nice.
Supply Chain for Dummies. So I'll contact you via LinkedIn to get that set up. Also, Sales and Marketing Conference. Our next virtual conference comes up January 28th. I think I had the wrong date earlier, but it's January 28th. It's going to run from 9 to 5. We're going to have some great sessions. Blythe is going to have a session to be determined along with who she'll be talking to. And we'll have a special episode to put that coffee down on that. But it's going to be all kinds of industry leaders, executives, and freight sales coming together and talking about both sales and marketing, some of the trends that we're going to see in 2021. So keep in tune of that, and we'll catch you in 2021 for the next episode of Put That Coffee Down.
That's right. Happy New Year.
I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been reading all the war, and I've been shutting down the stars. Yeah, cause when it rains and it pours, yeah, and I'm ready for some more.